This is Papa Smurf. You're listening to Our Lifestyle, the podcast, with ODB and the Mayor.
Yo, this is Rob Maggi, and you're listening to Our Lifestyle podcast.
Yo, as we get started, we want to thank our title sponsor, Scrapin' the Coast. You can visit scrapinthecoast.com for more information. Their next event, 22nd annual, is going to be the last weekend in June. They haven't yet announced it for 2024, but rest assured we will be out there. One of the biggest, baddest shows in the country. Get ready for more information coming soon on Scrapin' the Coast. Tap on the hashtag #ScrapinTheCoast for more information. We appreciate the continued support of Custom Car Show Productions. Yo, it's Our Lifestyle Podcast, also known as OLP. Appreciate you guys coming back to rock with us. This is episode 336. We've got a jam-packed episode. Biggity Mike the Mayor is out. He's gallivanting. Almost a no-call, no-show. Hadn't heard from him. Hit him up and said, yo, we're ready to record, and that's when he swerves, gets sideways, and says, hey, he's going out tonight. Can't make this stuff up. I guess he's hitting the clubs, not really wanting to phone in and, let us know. But the show, as you guys know, must go on. But episode 336 got a jam-packed, as I said, agenda. This episode, you probably saw from the cover art, which I do for each episode. We have Anthony AJ Ammendola on. So some of you guys might know him as Ant, but AJ, as his friends call him, is a longtime mini trucker, really has roots back to Florida that we'll talk about. His Isuzu Space Cab graces the cover of December 06 Street Trucks. So we'll talk about that iconic GOAT status build, plus so much more. There's a lot there. There's even a previous build that will tie in and things such as that. So stick with us for the title guest, and I think you guys are really going to like it. Tip of the cap to AJ. Thank you for taking the time to sit down. As I always say, I also want to reinforce that he's been on the list a long time, so I do know some of you guys have given us guest names and had suggested people and whatnot. Believe me, we've still got a pretty solid list, and I've got a few guys that I'm going to be recording with here real soon, which will help us and to kind of get through the list. Now, in addition, I have talked to Bill at Camp and Drag, and I am going to try to sit down with him a few minutes to do a wrap-up for Camp and Drag, and I say this try to remember every year to say this. Many of you have been to Camp and Drag, many of the listeners. If you haven't and you want to experience something totally awesome in our truck scene, hit up campndrag.com, camp and then the letter N, drag, Camp and Drag. The cool thing is they have a Lincoln as one of their rotating photos on there, as well as some other cool videos, or photos rather. Their event is always mid-July, and it's up there in Waveland, Indiana. My dad and I, rest in peace, Papa Smurf, we drove up there in 2012, and man, we had a blast. But I'm going to have him on just to kind of do a wrap-up, talk a few minutes. I didn't get a chance to align with Bill, unfortunately, before the show, so we want to show him a little bit of love and hopefully get some of you maybe that haven't been to that event next year to gallivant on up to Indiana, where it's kind of nice. Last I heard, there's still not the best cell phone reception there, so you really get kind of an off-the-grid experience. That's at least what I experienced 11 years ago, but more to come from Bill at Camp and Drag. The episode overview is brought to you by our family at Hammered Weekend Wear. If you want to show them some love, visit HAMMERD weekendwear.com. Hit them up. They had some recent new pre-sales that we talked about in the last episode. Any of the extras that they may have ordered, you can go and snag those, including banners and stickers. Show Hammered Weekend Wear a little bit of love. Hit them up now, HAMMERD wecanwear.com. Okay, next we got the general updates. And I was going to talk to Mike about the Gallivanting Man debut album that, people are patiently waiting for. I know people have hit me up with some ideas for the album cover. And, we're spending $1 million a track. We're going over the budget, like Em said. And hopefully we can get this album out. I mean, I think Mike has really been snoozing on it. I was also going to tell him something about, Hank Norris and something I was talking to Josh Ellis about with CBGD or CBGB, which is that old club up in New York, known for the many concerts there. And, Hank wants to talk to Mike because he kind of feels like there's maybe some copyright infringement with, Eastbound Get Down, EBGD and CBGB. So Hank was kind of thanking me for using the acronym because he said, hey, I think I got something now on Mike. We can go after him. So, Mike, you better watch out, dude. I say that because Mike is trying to wrangle me up and remind you guys that Eastbound Get Down show is going to go on pre-sale or pre-registration soon. And that's going to be next January. So many of you know Mike and John, contrary to what everyone thinks, I'm not involved in this gig. They have their event Eastbound Get Down, short EBGD, and that's every January, of course, in Destination Daytona, or at that event kind of in the greater Daytona area. If you go on Instagram and type in Eastbound, which is 2 words, and then Get Down, of course, you'll see Eastbound Get Down show, and it's January 12th, 13th, and 14th for 2024. And again, that's at Destination Daytona Complex. Very cool event. You can look at some of the photos there and see it's a good mix of vehicles, lowered, lifted, old school, new school, minis, full sizes, you name it. Eastbound Get Down. So I'll talk more with Mike next week on that. Again, Hank's pretty upset, but if he can somehow, piggyback off John and Mike and maybe get a lucrative deal, that's what Hank's trying to do. The General Updates is brought to you by our family at Lone Star Throwdown. So hear me out on this. We keep talking about this 8/1/2023 date, and if you're a day one listener on July 28th, you only have a couple of days, and what I would tell you is this. Set your reminders for 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which I think is 12 Central, if I remember correctly. The pre-registration for Lone Star Throwdown, which is in Conroe every year, the last week in February, is going to go down on 8/1. So remember, in years past, it took them till about Christmas time, right around, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, they start to post and go, hey, we're going to close pre-registration on 12/31. And then you got the late stragglers and boom, it finally closes, they sell out. What we noticed last year was, I think it was a 56-hour window that the 2,000 pre-registrations were sold out. So if you want to go, in terms of bringing a vehicle, 8/1 is going to be your key date. Of course, if you want to come and spectate, come on Gallivant to Conroe, Texas next year with us. Something I would reinforce is that Radar has continued to say, and I'm sure Lonnie feels the same way, they want more mini trucks there. So, with that being said, register those mini trucks. Now, keep in mind, you cannot transfer the registration. That was something they implemented this year, but just know it's worth it. We can't wait to be out there in Conroe, Texas next February. So, LoneStarThrowdown.com for more information. All right, next we got the trivia with Mike, and although he's out gallivanting,
now it's time to get serious.
This one might be a fun one, kind of a little adult-oriented. What was the name of the male-oriented magazine that can be seen in the movie Splash? So what was the, male-oriented magazine that could be seen in the 1984? Do we want to call it a cult classic, or do we want to call it a classic? I'll call it a cult classic. I don't know. Let's be honest. I don't know if Mike's even seen it. I think Tom Hanks, rest in peace, John Candy. Just an awesome movie to me, going back and watching it. Believe it or not, on Disney Plus, you can see it. Now, there was some edits done for Disney Plus, and they didn't edit out, I think in the beginning at least, maybe even still, this magazine that I'm talking about. But Daryl Hannah's in it. I mentioned John Candy, Eugene Levy. So many greats in that film. But what was the name of the adult-oriented magazine that can be seen in that film? And what's funny is they're handed out to colleagues and customers who begin reading this magazine right there in public. So that's a throwback for you. 1984, that's going to be the 40th anniversary next year. It's crazy to start thinking 84 has been 40 years. That's how I know I'm getting old. Trivia with Mike is brought to you by The Spark Show. We're going to be at The Spark Show here real soon. If you go to thesparkshow.com, we recently had Adam and Dizzy on to talk about it. The show, of course, is the 11th, 12th, and 13th of August, 2023. That's in Sevierville, Tennessee at the Sevier County Fairgrounds. It's going to be crazy, 10th annual event. Good people, come on out and gallivant with us to The Spark Show. Next, we got Hut 1, Hut 2, Hut 3, Hut, Old Dirty Ballard live and uncut. This one's a fun one. It's a good one. It's the H word, my friends, health. Lately, I've seen, friends, homies, clubmates, colleagues, a lot of people on social media posting about a little bit more focus on health than maybe in the past. We're not getting any younger. So I encourage you, whatever you feel you may need to do to become a little healthier. That could just be the routine checkups with the doc. Maybe walking a little bit more, drinking more water, less XYZ, whatever that is, right? I'm not going to tell people how to live their lives, but I'll tell you this. I've been doing a better job myself, health-wise, and it feels good. A lot more energy, especially on the weekends, getting up super early, getting things done, not getting as crazy. I say that. I think I'm getting as crazy as I used to, but in a different way. So ODB Live in a Cut this week is just basically, hey, listen, get out there, stay as healthy as you can, YOLO, right? You only live once, and, do the best you can. And if you're a type of person that doesn't care and you go, hey, YOLO, only live once, I'm going to live crazy, hey, do what you do, man. So it's just my feedback to you guys. ODB Live in a Cut brought to you by Joey at Get Decked. If you want to put artwork or a photo on a skate deck, he can do it. Look up getdecked_VA on Instagram or Joey Dilworth. He is certainly good people. Now, in addition to Get Decked, I do want to give a tip of the cap to Joey Dilworth. He also runs the show Attitude Check. So it's August 14th. I believe it's one of the longer shows we've experienced. It's August 14th through the 20th, and it's called Attitude Check 11. All-in tattoos, Get Decked, illusion wraps, $40 registration at the gate. Good people. So, again, Joey, thanks for all the support that you always have the back of the scene, right? So many different shows and vendors and things like that, but also kind of sticking your neck out there and doing Attitude Check. Of course, Attitude Check 11, again, August, it looks like 14th through the 20th. Pretty cool stuff. Get out there if you can. And before I forget, that is at Mr. B's Bluegrass Park in VA. So that's in Virginia. Okay, next we got the scene updates. And last week, I did skip through a lot of these because it just was a jam-packed show. So I'm just going to go through a few of these things. And I think this show's kind of moving forward a little bit, quicker than in the past. And I think I'm going to continue to try to balance things. Sometimes we'll have super long shows like we did last episode. Sometimes we'll keep things efficient. But I want you guys to get to Bill for Camp and Drag and also Anthony so you guys can hear from him as well. But Fueled Photo and Film, do me a favor. It's free. Go on YouTube. I'm going to post a link to their Scraping the Coast video. It's a good dude. If you can, we don't ask for a lot here. Go subscribe to the channel. It's called Fueled, just how it sounds, Photo and Film. And he's got a little under 200 subscribers, but let's grow that. Certainly a good dude, and he does a takeover in Biloxi 2023 Scraping the Coast, so I want to show the homie some love. Phil Gordon had posted this back in July, and again, I kind of didn't get a chance to cover a lot of these, but he mentioned a story, which he sometimes will do in the bag to board. I met Anne Grande, I think is how you said her last name, about 6 years ago before she was diagnosed with cancer. And he kind of goes on to talk about her truck. And he shared a very cool photo of her with the Isuzu dragging it, throwing some sparks. And, she has since passed away. She was a hardcore mini trucker down here in Florida. I thought it was a motivational kind of post by Phil. I hate Phil. So big ups to the homie for posting and keeping her legacy alive. Matt Yarborough says, I may have taken the term buckle up a little too seriously, and it was a dent in his tailgate. Many of you know Matt Yarborough. He's on TikTok. He's on Facebook, always doing cool stuff. I think Instagram as well. Go show him some love. Dude's always out doing cool stuff, and it was great, Matt, linking up with you at Mini Nats. Jeff Rosenberg, he says, here is the date for 2024, Saturday, June 8th, so we'll make sure we communicate this in the future, but they are throwing out Kickin' It Old School again, which is presented by Class Act, and of course that's in Boring, Oregon. So not boring as in not fun, but Boring, Oregon. You guys get it. Here was a post from John Barefoot. He says, mission accomplished. Good guys, Builder's Choice Top 10, which was awesome. And John Barefoot, I got a chance to slap hands with him at Mini Nats. Many of you have told me one of the best dudes out there in the scene, living a positive lifestyle and doing the damn thing, so I love hearing it. Tim Chestnut, I know this is kind of Airhead Nation type stuff, but he said he tried to answer the birthday wishes, but he gave one big thank you to them all. And Tim Chestnut, a friend of ours, and good dude, so big ups, Tim. Always good seeing your post and hearing from you. Speaking of Matt Yarborough, I wanted to mention he had posted back on July 8th that his dad had celebrated his 75th born day. So awesome stuff. Good picture, and love seeing you spending time with your pops. DJ Roberts was with Randy Frederick back on July 7th, and he says someone's very happy, his first mini truck. Thank you, Randy and Sarah. I'm sure we will have a blast. And there was a swapperoo of some sorts that went down. I don't want to give away the intel. Maybe we'll get Randy on next episode to talk a little bit about it. But a Toyota for a Toyota, pretty cool stuff. And it looks like DJ Roberts, his son, ends up with an awesome truck. So I love seeing that. Those guys are in the same club, so they did some kind of swapperoo around. But always love seeing when someone gets something they want, another guy gets something he wants or she wants, and biggity boom, before you know it, everyone's happy. Scott Schick, he says a few of us are cruising. I'm not even going to know how to say this. Emmendola, E-N-U-M Claw tonight. He's a cool dude. Got a chance to meet him a couple years ago, and I know they're getting ready for their show up in the Pacific Northwest with Sitting Pretty, good people, so I wanted to kind of throw that out there. This was cool. Brad Kreisman, he made the trip to Southeastern Truck Nationals, and I know that he did awesome. So he's out there with the family, living it up. Definitely hot summer, but it's not holding him down, that's for sure. Jeremy Kaufman, previous guest, previous MIC employee, Mazda fiend, if you will. He recently went through the journey of obtaining the Marvy that I think John from You Ain't Low. It was his Marvy, one of two that we knew that were in the country. And the post that I had saved was from July 8th. I do know that he since made a post where apparently he went to do some smog and emissions, and it's kind of like a racketeering deal out there where the shop goes, oh, well, you need to change all this stuff, even though it's not bad. And it was a little frustrating because it was like 10 or 15 grand. I can only imagine what those guys go through. For any of those that don't know, in California, they have really, really strict emission stuff. Florida had it back in the day, but not every county. I grew up in Pasco, not the crazy side of Pasco, by the way. You would have never saw our neighborhood on Tampa PD, I don't think, or whatever it was, Pasco PD. But the crazy thing about it was, in Florida, I never really had to deal with it because, again, growing up there in Pasco, we didn't have the same emission stuff that they had like in Hillsborough and some of the other counties, and they've since kind of done away with that. But the dudes out in Cali and the ladies, there's those strict rules, and that stuff can get costly. I'm sure it could get very frustrating, taking time off work, trying to like balance all that crap. So best of luck to you, homie. The big homie, Kirk Sullivan, got a chance to hang out with him last week. I was going to try to go to Southern Tradition with him, and it just didn't work out this year, but Kirk went to Southern Tradition. He went all the way to South Florida, picked up his truck. I know Brian Peterman helped with some bed work on it. Then he trailered all the way up to Georgia, went to the show, and he won his first ever Best of award, and it was Best Unfinished. So I know Kirk has put in a lot of work on the truck, repping No Regrets, and it's cool to see him kind of getting a little bit of, kudos for the build. The last one I want to share was John Barefoot also said he's with Jessica Roach. The irony of being out here working in what feels like 150-degree weather and 200% humidity, and he's working on Purgatory. So, ironic enough, those were a few of the items that I had wanted to cover on the last episode. Here's a couple for this episode. Joe Contenta, he says, my most recent makeover on a cruiser, love this truck, Datsun 620, a 78 to be exact. So pretty cool to see that. I know CJ Fayette, Craig Raleigh, and some other kinfolk, Justin Griffin, Eli, all of those guys, they had went out to the event, I think it was Lakeside Showdown, and CJ won a Best of award, so I saw he posted that up, so I wanted to give him props for that. Pretty cool setup. I know David DeCorver was out there with the dually, a couple of the Mazdas, of course, and the full-size truck, so always good to see those guys kind of getting together. Dayton Cooper, shout out to the homie. He says, well, here she is. Setback 2.0 has been a long 7 months getting this thing done. She's not 100%, but he was trying to get her ready for camp and drag. So Dayton, love seeing the hustle, love seeing you out there doing the damn thing, and it's good stuff. The last one I have is Ashley Wimmer. She says, thanks to Ryan Sumner, he did a wonderful job on the plaque for Sunny Hours, right? The Tacoma of hers that won Best Female mini truck for 2022. Ryan Sumner is back in the game. If you've been a long-time listener, at the very beginning, we had partnered with Ryan. In the News plaques was literally in our backyard here, about 15, 20 minutes from my house. And we kind of did a partnership back then. Ryan had eventually left the company. And I think with the way print magazines have kind of subsided somewhat, globally, right? And you think about all magazines, not just, automotive. I believe that company kind of shuttered its doors, and somehow Ryan was able to bring it back. So if you guys need plaques, Ryan Sumner, Sumner, he's your guy. He's a good dude, and I haven't talked to him in a minute, but I need to reach out to him and touch base. Good dude. Ashley, the plaque looks awesome. Okay, so the new Street Trucks is out, and I got to look at this to see. It's August 2023, so they've kind of lined these up pretty well lately with, receiving them in the mailbox. Now, of course, I was missing, for some reason, my mailman wasn't delivering some of these. I don't know why, but there is a mini truck, an S10 featured in here, a really sick C10 on the cover, of course, BODB. I've got the R Lifestyle write-up you guys can check out in the back. And in this one, I talked about the 24-year mark, because if you think about Street Trucks, started August 99. So when we hit August 1st here in a few days, that to me marks that official 24-year mark. So that lined up really well with this issue. But check it out. Again, Street Trucks is one of the only truck publications here still kind of in the U.S. Of course, that is apparently going to change because of the news that we shared recently with Mini Truckin coming back. But certainly, Street Trucks, I have this awesome, unique opportunity to write every month in the publication. I think it's been 4 years. I'm pretty certain September will be the 4-year mark. So, kind of, give or take, 20% of the time, I've been on board with them. So, I look to stay on as long as I can, and I really appreciate the opportunity from Brendan Burrell, who, by the way, I think is doing a fantastic job. Right? Let's stop for a moment. Give Brandon some props. He's out there hustling. He's trying to get these issues out even ahead of time in terms of his deadlines behind the scenes. And I know he's a hardworking dude, So Burrell Images on Instagram and YouTube. Check him out. He's a good guy. Look forward to Brandon, whatever you continue to kind of curate with Street Trucks Magazine and the entire team. The new custom Trucks Mag from Japan is also circulating. As you know, Redbeard has those, and if you want to get one, you have to get with him if you're looking to score one of those. Now, I know Randy's truck is in that issue, and I'm looking to get my hands on it as well. I know there was some other awesome trucks in there as well, so those are kind of hard to get, but again, Redbeard is your guy. We had him on the podcast in the past, and of course, we've talked about that. I want to thank Craig Braid and Matt Weathers for some of the photos that they shared with me. These guys are kind of what I refer to as OLP capos. They're kind of captains, if you will, if we have our ranking within the OLP regime, so to speak. And again, I can't thank these guys enough. Big supporters of the podcast, but awesome good dudes that are always going above and beyond, and certainly thank them. They were both at the Northwest Showdown presented by Freaks of Nature, and that looked like an awesome show. They both sent me some photos, and it was cool to see King Tuck, as well as so many other awesome rides out there. So good people. Look them up. Craig Braid, of course, we recently had him on, and Matt Weathers, both friends of ours, if you will. The scene update's brought to you by Garage Gear Clothing. If you want to hit up garagegearclothing.com, you'll see that they have some free shipping opportunities. As the holidays approach, this is a great avenue for you to potentially buy gifts, because if you think about the Garage Girl, the children's attire that they have, and then for the guys, of course, and ladies, sport trucks, full size, lowered, lifted, wagons, you name it. These guys have an awesome arsenal. Shout out to Crystal and the entire team over at Garage Gear Clothing. Visit garagegearclothing.com today, or hit them up at one of these venues or one of these events worldwide. They're good people. Hey, so like I said before we wrap up the scene updates, I did want to call our friend Bill at Camp and Drag. And Bill, dude, just want to say congratulations. Looks like you had another great year, but man, welcome back to the show.
Appreciate you guys having me again.
Yeah, no problem. I was telling people earlier, campandrag.com is really where they're going to get all the key information. Obviously, as the year goes on, there'll be more about 2024. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, though. How awesome was it this year? And just talk to us a little bit about the experience with Camp and Drag 2023.
Yeah, this year was good. We had plenty of vendors out there, plenty of sponsors that helped us get through this year. Of course, they were calling for rain for the whole week, and I think that kept some people out. If you see, there's people commenting how it looked a little light on people this year, and I agree from our total numbers. But the quality was still there. We still had 400 to 500 trucks in the show field. And like I said, I can't stress enough, if you're going to stay home for the weather that they call is coming, don't do it, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we've all said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and go to a show, and then it's beautiful, and then we're like, man, I'm so glad I didn't stay home, and that type of thing, right?
Yeah, they can't call the weather out, a week out, they said rain from Wednesday through Sunday, every day, and we got a sprinkle on Saturday morning for 45 minutes, and other than that, it was probably one of the best weather weekends we've had in the last 10 years.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and I always remind my buddies, because they're like, oh, it's going to rain Saturday. I was like, well, let's look at the exact city or the exact spot, because, like in Florida, it can rain on one side of the road, and then we're partying on the other side, so...
That's how it was in Indiana. 40 minutes down the road, they got 2.5 inches of rain, and by us, they got nothing.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. You guys can follow Camp and then _N_drag on Instagram. One thing that I noticed is, like you said, there's always you got your mainstay of guys and ladies that always come out, but there's always this awesome quality. But something that piqued my interest was like this, the Tilt Med Evolution kind of crew, right? I would thought that was cool that those guys kind of set up, and that's got to be a good feeling knowing that some of those guys come out. I think the Tandem guys came out one year too.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Well, last year we had the Tandem guys, and it was pretty cool to see that. That's kind of a niche right there of the Tandem guys, and I mean, Nick at Night drove his tandem axle hard body all the way from the West Coast. Brian with the tandem axle S10, and he drove or trailered it from Eugene, Oregon. We had guys from all over the Midwest. I mean, there was 10 tandems out there. This year, I think we had 7 or 8 tilt beds up on the pad. And next year, a little preview. What we're going to try and do is something. I always try doing something different. Next year, we're going to try and make the pad a memorial for people that have been to the show and their vehicles are still around, but they cannot attend.
Wow.
So I've spoken to some No Regrets members about getting Jared Redder's Death Machine and Ernie's Impala, the Severed guys for getting Neil Stark's Courier, and Jeremy Beaver's Lolux. I talked to some of the guys about getting Vaughn's truck out there to put on the pad. Just some of the key players that have been to our show and supported us. Unfortunately, they passed on, but their trucks are still around. Kind of put them in a spotlight and say that we haven't forgotten them.
I love it. The legacy lives on with these guys and some of the ladies, and I love the idea, and I love that. Bill, you're always kind of forward thinking. It's like, hey, you had a great show this year, but you're like already kind of plotting away. And I want to give a shout out to Scott. I know he changed his Instagram name, but Scott Bunselmeyer, tiltbed_Mazda. That guy is a ride or die. He's out there every year, and it was cool. One of our old Florida Severed guys, Howard, he has a Mercedes wagon, but he lives up in Indiana. You probably saw him. He was up there, and he sent me a ton of photos from it. I got to thank Howard for that. But, man, like seeing Scott's truck out there and everybody having a good time, man, I was like, damn, I wish I lived closer.
It's always a good time, and like you said, with trying to think of next year. I mean, it's something that if you don't start thinking about it now, and I mean, my wife won't agree that I should be thinking of it all year, but at the same time, you got to keep rolling with it, and just keep your mind open to new things, and that's what we try doing. I mean, it's one of the key things with Camp and Direct too. For the last 12 years, we've always donated to a family in need. And this year we did the Hot Wheels thing again that we're going to donate to Riley's Children's Hospital. I'm still in the progress of counting Hot Wheels, but we're well over 10,000.
Wow.
And and money wise, we helped 3 families this year. Brian Bibbs, who's a local guy here. Charlie Hacker lost his 2-month-old son. The No Regrets guys reached out and we helped them out. And one of our own club members, his wife is going through chemo and radiation from brain cancer. We helped them out with the mystery box idea that we did. So it's more than just a truck show for us too. I mean, we try and use the platform that we have to help others in the scene, because one day it might be us, and it's just something that, like I said, I use Camp and Drag to help others. So
yeah, and I give you mad kudos for that, and I would encourage people that if like I said earlier in this episode, I've been to the show, I've had a great time, and I know it's kind of far for some people, but if there's something you can do to help, give or take about 11 months from now, 10 months from now, or get with Bill, let them know, like if you can send some stuff, anything you can do to help, that you guys do a great thing. And so I appreciate you doing that. I also noticed, because of Howard sending me photos, there was a guy named BJ Anderson, I think he goes by, but it was pretty cool. One of the trucks I saw there was almost like a Mike Finnegan Tacoma tribute truck. That had to have been cool to see.
For sure.
And I thought that was kind of cool. Now, did you have a favorite this year, or can you share with us maybe who won Best of Show?
Best of Show actually went to Jeremy Beaver's Lolux.
Nice.
Joe Hughes has done a great job of bringing the rest of that truck to life and getting it running and driving and finishing up some of the touches that Jeremy wasn't able to. And I mean, if you haven't seen the truck in person, I mean, it stayed in bare metal for how many years, and Jeremy and Joe have gotten that truck to just be a spectacle to see, man.
Yeah, that thing is like borderline hot rod mini truck. It's kind of checks a lot of boxes. Now,
it does for sure.
Now, what was cool is you said, there's a lot of vendors out there and stuff too, and it's always cool to see Randy He's got all those different brands and kind of under low label, but to see him set up out there and slinging merch, that's got to be a good feeling knowing how much support you have from the scene with these different companies.
Randy's been a big time supporter for years. And like you said, I mean, having the vendors, we actually had a lot of vendors this year. Hot Rides Mag came up from down by you. Sean Rose was out there slinging panels. Nichols Paint and Fab from Wrenched was out there they set up a booth. Laid Out was out there. Asphalt Army, Driven, obviously Drop 'em Where, who's one of our title sponsors, was out there as always.
Mm-hmm.
Drop Shop. Just, I mean, we can't, like I said earlier, with the raffle and auction that we do to help people. I mean, we couldn't do it without those people. And also, like you said, if you can send something for the raffle, I mean, just like you guys did at OLP, sending a, care package with some shirts and banners and stuff to put in there for the raffle. I mean, it might be only a couple bucks on your end, but if it, gets us $20 or $40 to throw in for a raffle and auction, it means a lot to us.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing I wanted for people to know, if they haven't been to the show, one thing that always sticks in mind when I look back at my old photos when my dad went, paint a picture for us how people will line their trucks up kind of along the road, and then people cruise, right? And it goes into the evening time. Kind of explain to people that atmosphere that they may not be able to experience at other shows.
Yeah, so it is pretty, it is different from most shows where, you go to a parking lot, you post up, and you go to the hotel at the end of the show. For us, I mean, we rent out 640 acres of campground, and that's exclusive to us from Thursday to Sunday. They'll come, they'll set up with their clubs and their homies, and they'll set up their tents and campers behind, and then along the road, they'll all post up their trucks. So even when they're not in the showgrounds, if you're cruising around, you can see the different clubs with everything lined up along the road, and it's just a different feeling to be cruising through the campgrounds like that and see something different than, I mean, we all miss the hotel days and, going hanging out after Indy Truck Bash and in the hotels and stuff, but this is a little different than that,
Yeah, it is, and I want to say tip of the cap to maybe No Regrets. They had a huge, awesome lineup, and someone had posted a photo. I forget if it was Zach, and looking at a video now, and they just had so much going right there. No Regrets Georgia, you had No Regrets from everywhere, and it was so cool to me because it's that vibe of the show field. You could throw a tennis ball, and then later you might maybe you leave your truck there, maybe you just cruise it over and park it by your tent. And people have to realize it's all right there, and it's just such a good time.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, No Regrets. I think they brought 13 minis out along with some full size, some big body 4-door cars. And like you said, I mean, Georgia was there, and so was Bobby Thompson from Arizona. So, I mean, there's a couple thousand miles in between the distance that they traveled to be there.
Oh, yeah. Now, one thing I think that's underrated that you've done a great job on at Camp and Drag Bill is the artwork each year. You've done some cool themes, and every time I'm always like, man, why didn't I think of that idea? You've had some kind of wrestling things in the past and these different colors. This year was pretty cool because the Camp and Drag almost had dare I say, a cartoon. I kind of thought of the old Batman Robin type thing, but that theme, Graphic Disorder, really knocked it out of the park.
For sure. And that started too with Matt Hodgson from he designed the flyers, and Graphic Disorder ran with the same idea of the cartoony comic book kind of feel.
Yep.
And we played with that for the whole theme of the year, and it was really pretty cool. I mean, and even looking at that, I don't know if you're familiar with Wicked Wonkas. They do custom Hot Wheels cars.
Yes. Yeah, you told me about them.
Yeah, so he donated 2 Toyotas that were tuned, so they had, the tops were a little cartoony, and it was just a little, kind of all played along with the same vibe, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you guys want to check them out, it's Wicked Wonkas, like Willy Wonka. Wicked Wonka's Chop It Factory is FAKTORY, but if you type that in on Instagram, that'll pop up for you guys. Now, before we wrap it up, I did want people to know, a couple years ago we talked about this, but you have implemented this new process online that seems to go really well. And if somebody is interested, maybe they're going to go, hey, I'm going to jot this down next year. We're going to try to come up to Camp and Drag. You do have this kind of registration process and application, if you will. Is there anything you can share on that, maybe to streamline for someone that's maybe looking to come next year? Is it pretty simple overall? And when does that typically open?
Sure. So, due to some unforeseen things that we had happen back in 2015, where I had to, fork out 25 grand to fix the campground because people, felt like they needed to do donuts in the middle of the field. We implemented this application process where it takes 2 minutes. I mean, it's your name, address, club, if you're bringing a vehicle or not, and references. And the references are only because if I don't know who you are, I can reach out to them to say, hey, is this guy good? Like, I don't know him. Especially I use Facebook a lot to double check. And now with Facebook's new privacy policies, it kind of sucks because I can't see pictures and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, it's usually applications open up around April 1st. I can't stress enough that if you think you're going to go, fill one out. It takes you 2 minutes, but it takes me 20 minutes on, July 15th when you're trying to message me and I get no service. And people are trying to say, hey, my wife wants to get in, or, this dude's coming up from Georgia, but he forgot to fill one out. If you think you're going to come, go to campanddrag.com, fill out the application. It takes 2 minutes. And anybody that's wanting to come, whether it's you with your vehicle, your wife, your kid, if they're over 16. I mean, my mom is on the application process, so if she wanted to come in, we have to check her name on there. So it don't matter who you are, you got to be on there.
That's legit, and we heard the only guy that wasn't allowed to come is Hank from Hammered Weekend Wear. He's banned, apparently, but, he's trying to get back in good graces.
He's working on it, but we're still a little sketchy on that, dude.
Right, we are. I would encourage everyone, don't just take our word for it. If you go on Instagram or Facebook and click on or type in the hashtag camp, the letter N, drag, Instagram's kind of a little different now. You can filter by top posts or recent top posts, and you'll see there is just a good mix of vehicles. I mean, it's kind of like mini truck heaven. It has a totally different vibe than maybe mini Nats, but it has its own good vibe. And I would encourage, if you guys have never been out there, please add it to your bucket list and get out. Bill and team are great people. Bill, anything else you got for us on Camp and Drag?
No, pretty much. I mean, we've touched on all of it. Again, I'd like to say thanks to, my family, all our sponsors, my club. I mean, I couldn't do it without Ballistic. They're a small club and not many of them know it, but, we work our asses off to bring what I feel one of the bigger shows in the Midwest. I couldn't do it without the help of everybody that surrounds us. And that's, again, my family, club, sponsors, vendors, the town of Waveland, everybody out there. So, you guys keep helping me. We'll keep bringing it to you.
No doubt. And I did tell people earlier this episode, my last thought is it is kind of a way to get off the grid a little bit too. Because when I went up there 11 years ago with my pops, the cell phone service, like you said, it kind of gets you off your device. It gets you out there living life, dragging trucks, enjoying the truck scene. So I encourage people to get out there. And Bill, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, man. And thanks for what you do for the truck community.
No, thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Stay on the rise, my friend.
All right, be good, Jason.
Yo, thanks, Bill, from Camp and Drag, for coming on. We really appreciate you taking the time, and it was cool to link up, man. We have taken a look at a lot of the photos. I know I mentioned my buddy Howard, old ST Florida guy that has recently moved up to the Midwest. He was there. He sent me, 50 to 100 photos, and, man, it was jam-packed, so it looked like it was awesome. Again, get out there if you can. The scene updates brought to you by Garage Gear Clothing. I may have mentioned them earlier, but huge shout out again to Garage Gear Clothing. Visit their site for options that include free shipping. Next, I'm going to throw in industry updates. I haven't done this in a while. There's just really a couple that I want to mention. This was something that's continuing to build steam and obviously has, it's kind of perplexing to some of us that are, fossil fuel guys, if you will. But obviously there's this shift in the industry with the EV movement, right? So electric vehicles, they're not for me as of right now. Not saying that they ever will or won't be, but it's just not something in my kind of bloodstream, right? I'm sure like many of you. Now, again, I'm not going to hate on them because that's just not my thing. But there was a Reuters report where it says GM shares fall as automaker outlines new cost-cutting drive. So with these different companies announcing their quarterly earnings and things like that, this was July 25th, so just a day or so ago. Basically, they say that GM, General Motors, is wrestling with cost and struggling to build more electric vehicles, as it reported Tuesday. Then that adjusted pre-tax profits and margins in its key North American market fell from the first quarter, despite a jump in revenue and per vehicle transaction prices. Shares were down, of course, a little over 4%. But the automaker said that it plans to invest less in new products and cut operating costs by an additional $1 billion through the end of the year, which is kind of crazy. They kind of did go on to say, the piece that I read in here was that they said that they've reversed plans to kill its least expensive EV, which is the Bolt, at the end of the year. Instead, the company now expects to produce an updated Bolt with a newer battery pack, but did not disclose details about cost, timing, or plant location. So I'm very curious to see how quickly more people adopt, to EVs. The reason why it's ironic to me, the only reason I'm bringing it up is because like energy costs are up here a lot in Florida. I kind of in the building industry a little bit, we hear a little bit from Tampa Electric, which is also known as TECO. And I bring this up because some of my coworkers that recently got EVs are like, yeah, man, our TECO bill's up a lot, obviously just running your air conditioning and stuff. But imagine now plugging in a car, that's going to obviously drive it up as well. So again, not usually a topic I cover here just because it's not my thing, but it is what it is. Now, the last thing that I'll cover from an car industry, truck industry standpoint is something that I shared in the Airhead Nation group. So if you're not in that Facebook group, please check it out. This was an autoevolution.com article, and it says Tesla Cybertruck surpassed 1.9 million pre-orders, more than the population of Phoenix, right? So they were trying to compare it to the population of a city, and they did that. And it talks about almost 2 million people. That is more than the entire population of, let's say, they said Phoenix, Philadelphia. People continue to reserve an electric pickup truck, even though waiting times have become very, very long, right? So I don't recall what the price was. I don't think you had to put a lot down. But again, just not my thing. I mean, I look at this truck, and I'm not trying to hate on it. I just don't understand what people think is so cool about it. I mean, I think it looks ugly. I'm sure, obviously, there's some people that just love that company and they're going to support it no matter what they put out. I don't understand. It seems like they've been plagued with some challenges, including safety type things, but we'll have to see. I'm sure someone's going to get one and try to put it on the ground. We'll have to see who that is, but there's a few industry updates for you. I'll continue to maybe provide some of these. Maybe not so much on the EV side, but on the Chevrolet pickup side and things like that. I'm still sticking with my '08. This is going to be year 15. This December marks 15 years ago that GM was, in the midst of the downturn in the economy, and I was able to get $10,000 off. That was a rebate through GM, $10,000 off whatever price I could get for a Duramax. And I was able to do that. Had a friend who his family had worked for GM for 30, 40, 50 years, something like that. And they got me a great price plus the $10,000 off. So my good old 2008, knock on wood, GM or Chevy Duramax 2500, I didn't even pay $30,000 for that thing. And at the time was the most expensive vehicle, me personally, I had ever purchased. It blows my mind to see what truck prices are now, 15 years later. Many of us kind of mini truckers, we go buy a truck. You kind of want to have the nice amenities. You want to have, leather, maybe the nicer infotainment system and things like that. And when you start stepping up to those higher end packages, certainly that stuff is expensive as heck, man. But the industry news this week is brought to you by our friends over at AccuAir. Visit AccuAir.com for more information. Again, they have the plug-and-play applications and different components that allow you to auto-set the height of your vehicle. I have it on my 64 Lincoln. I absolutely love it. You can, of course, use the app if you have the ECU Plus. I also want to give a huge shout-out this week to The Drop with Brian and Frank, the podcast. I know I haven't talked a lot about this, but The Drop with Frank and actually Brian, I think it's titled. It's available anywhere you consume podcasts, including YouTube. So go out there and check it out. It's free, and always love checking those guys out and seeing what they got going on. All right, the show updates. Good news this week. I'm not going to really cover much. I did cover the one show update earlier, and last week I literally went through 22 shows, I think, between now and mid to kind of late October, and I still had left off a few, like Lakeside Showdown, Northwest Showdown just happened. I talked about Joey Dilworth's show earlier, so there's a ton going on out there. I'm going to continue to do the normal show updates. The only shout out that I want to give from a show perspective is the Spark Show. Big ups to the homies. As I said earlier, we will be up there the 11th, 12th, and 13th of August in Sevierville, Tennessee, which is right over by Pigeon Forge. They're going to have a cruise on Saturday night. So visit thesparksshow.com for more information. All right, next, the podcast updates. I want to give you guys the latest review through Apple Podcasts. This was reawakening. Man, this show is bringing me back to my days in high school and right afterwards. Best days rolling my 91 Mazda B2600. Time to get back into the scene. Thanks for the inspiration. And that was Bobcat Bob 25. I think he left that just within the last few days, so thank you so much. I believe I had read this one, NR Jordan. Hey, brother, Jordan from No Regrets, Bakersfield. Been loving the recent episodes. Keep killing it. I'll see you guys in person at Mini Nats 2024. So those are the latest. If you haven't, if you listen on an iPhone, iPad, maybe even the Mac, and you're in that pre-installed Apple Podcast app, search OLP or tap on Library. Select OLP and scroll down. Tap the 5 stars. If you want to go a step further, you can write a review, and then I'll read those in the future. We're trying to get past 200. Past 300. We're very close to that number. If you're on Spotify, Podbean, Pandora, you name it, just leave a thumbs up. Many of those apps will allow you to do that. That certainly helps us out. The only other update that I wanted to share is we do have some merch stuff coming soon. We're going to re-up a couple things with a nice mix. And we've got some other big things coming a little bit later this year, so stick with us. More announcements as we move into the second part of the year. Those are the podcast updates this week, brought to you by our family over at Graphics Mafia, GRAPHIX Mafia.com. If you need stickers, some design work, maybe you've got an old decal that you want to reproduce, or let's say you need club stickers for whatever reason. Maybe you're patching in some new members. Look no further than Buddy and Ryan at Graphics Mafia. That's graphics with an X, mafia.com. All right, in closing, I just got the Airhead Nation updates, and I'm going to share one item with you, and then we will roll into Anthony's audio, a.k.a. AJ. Good dude, of course. I'm certainly looking forward to you guys hearing this, and thanks again to Bill from Camp and Track for coming on earlier. But Mr. DP Jr., Daryl Poe Jr., want to say a big happy born day. He mentioned on July 24th, thank you for all the birthday wishes. I tried to give a heart on all of those, but he said really appreciates it. So that's just one of our great supporters. He's helped us in many ways, and I can't thank him enough. And Nikki for all the support. So we'll see you guys hopefully at a show soon. The Airhead Nation update is brought to you by CNS Metalworks. If you need AccuAir, Vire compressors, airbags, you name it, visit CS-Metalworks with an S, cs-metalworks.com. They're also on Instagram, CNS Metalworks. You can hit up the owner, Chris Burns, and he will take care of you. Maybe you've got a question, as Ruben said in the past. Maybe you want to book your vehicle to be bagged. Hit up Chris Burns. He will take care of you. CS Metalworks out there in Cali. Good people. Fontana, I think technically, right over by the raceway, if I remember correctly. With that being said, thank you so much. Again, I tried to get a hold of Mike. He literally just swerved us. I think he forgot it was our day to record, and when I texted him and said, yo, I'm getting ready to call you, he said, yo, man, we're going out to eat, man. I'm like, damn, dude, the gallivanting man doesn't stop, dude. Out to eat, the Murray Mansion, all these lavish trips, 6, 7, 8, 9 vacations a year. The gallivanting just does not stop. But as I said earlier, the show must go on. So whether the gallivanting continues or not, I'm going to keep the pedal stomped over here. OLP, we appreciate all the support. Stay on the rise. We out ya. Enjoy this interview. Yo, like I said, I'm super excited to sit down with Anthony Ammendola. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Hey, thanks for taking a little bit of time. I know it's been a long time coming, but always appreciate you chiming in on posts and stuff.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. You do a lot of cool content out there on social media, so always up for liking stuff that people post.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely appreciate that. Anthony, do you mind kind of, for the listeners, sharing a little bit of background about yourself, maybe even where you grew up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Florida, Orlando for the most part. Lived there, kind of my teenage years, early college years. Got in the scene in Orlando. That's kind of where I started. On a Saturday night, there was a hangout in Orlando in Kmart parking lot.
Yep.
That's where I kind of started meeting people in the scene, and kind of took off from there. And then I moved, I live in Texas, moved to Texas in 2006 for work. That's where I've been ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And we're kind of the same age. You probably remember growing up, the epic 80s and 90s. Were you into other stuff, like before you got into trucks, like bikes or anything like that?
Yeah, I was in the BMX bikes. Had a GT dyno performer. My best friend got me into bikes. Got me into in the beginning was car stereos.
Yeah.
His brother. So I was in bikes, car stereos, skateboards. Just we played sports in high school: baseball, football, swimming. So kind of did a lot of different things growing up. And my dad was a mechanic, so I always kind of gravitated towards cars.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it's crazy to me that a lot of us are kind of at this age now where our friend Sean over at Rad BMX Builds, he's doing some cool stuff, but I would have never thought when I was younger that like the BMX stuff would be like, it's everybody wants a bike, or maybe the bike they had when they were younger, even the skate decks, everybody's collecting them. It's kind of insane how I think we grew up in a pretty cool era.
I would agree with that. A lot of cool stuff. A lot of cool stuff came out of our era. I mean, I've been looking at bikes online, and just the prices that they're asking for something that I had, I paid a couple $100 for.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the bike thing is pretty cool. I like seeing some of these builds that guys are building with trucks, incorporating some of these, old school bikes into them as well. It's pretty neat. I think our generation and what we built, as you see, is coming back. I think guys are putting a modern twist on those things, and it's really freaking cool. Like, it's truly cool.
Yeah, I would have never thought that would be to this level. And sometimes I'll have a buddy that's like, man, I want to get into a bike or whatever, and I'm like, to be honest, like, you can get those 24, 26, and I think 29 inch, like, GT will release like a I call it a Pepto kind of pink color, and it'll be more affordable, plus it's a little bigger because, man, as much as it's neat to have a 20-inch bike, I've tried riding one a couple years ago, and I was like, good God, man, I can only do it for a few minutes, So it is kind of cool that they're doing the retro, a little bit bigger bikes.
Yeah.
But now you mentioned, what's funny is I got in the truck scene kind of mid to late 90s, but I wasn't really tied in with all of the Orlando guys. I remember hearing I never got to go to one of the water park Water Mania shows. I saw them in magazines, and then there were like a Pep Boys hangout, like you said, Kmart. I'd imagine you started kind of meeting some of the mainstay guys out there in Orlando, like the Dave Schulmans. I think Eddie was out there. A lot of those guys in that era.
Oh yeah, I mean, what's funny is I eventually would get into Mini Madness, which
right.
Dave Schulman was in Mini Madness. He was in the Orlando chapter. So me and Dave, I mean, I've known Dave for many, many years. We've had ups, we've had downs,
Yeah.
But yeah, Eddie, I know him. Obviously, I know, I would eventually meet Matt Ferguson from the shop.
Yep.
Oh man, a bunch of the Negative Camber guys, the original Orlando Negative Camber guys, I would eventually meet. They used to be in the car club. I think it was like Rated R or something of that effect.
I think Tim and Randy told me about that.
Yeah, Tim and Randy, those guys I knew. So yeah, it's kind of funny. Orlando, spawned off, the Negative Camber, the Severed Ties.
Yep.
And I knew all those guys. I just happened that, I was in Mini Madness. When I left Mini Madness, I actually went to Lifestyle Minis, which that's what Rob Scepter was in originally.
Yep.
And then he winds up going with Matt and those guys over to Severed. And so I was always kind of like wanted to be a relaxed guy, kind of just growing up in the magazines and looking at mini trucking and all, and that's when eventually Jay Church starts the Florida chapter in Melbourne. And I just happened to, I don't even know, I think it was through Street Source magazine, I think. It's kind of how I reached out to Matt or Jay, and that whole thing becomes into fruition. Like I wind up becoming a Relax member. Yeah,
I remember back in those days, and like Jay had talked a little bit about starting it, and it was kind of cool that the three big clubs at the time, Severed, NC, and RA, that they made their way to Florida, in kind of the mid to late 90s. That was pretty cool stuff. Now, some people may not know, like when you talk, and I don't know either. So, like when you first get into like trucks, was it? I had heard Matt Torgerson had worked on not the truck that we'll talk about later, but you had another truck. Was that one of your first minis?
Yeah. So originally, I get a black Mini, a black Isuzu regular cab, my senior year in high school. And so at this point, I've been to a lot of stereo shows. My best friend in high school, Jeff Renner, his brother was older than us, so he already had a car. He was big into stereos. We'd go to all the stereo shows local in Florida, and so I'm like a bass head,
right.
and so it went. I had some Solberg 10s behind the seat. Then I wound up getting a topper, putting a stereo in the bed. So I come to Orlando for college, and I have this black Isuzu topper stereo, and then I start hanging out on Saturdays at the Kmart parking lot, and I'm seeing drop trucks like laid out, and I'm seeing hydraulics and dancing beds and all those things, right? And I'm like, oh my god, like where I was from in Florida is like a small little town before I moved to Orlando, and I'm like, man, this is awesome, like. And so I decided, okay, like I'm gonna do something to my truck, and I can't even remember how I meet Matt, to be honest. Like just somehow in that whole scene of Kmart, really, and he starts building it. Like, so I was like, we did Amigo fenders, we did like a diamond tilt hood on it, we Frenched the antenna, we shaved door handles, we did all kinds of stuff on it. And then I drove it like that in primer for a little while, doing the under construction thing. And then eventually the president of Mini Madness paints it. And that was kind of a cool process because he painted it in a garage in his back of his parents' house, a makeshift paint booth. And I was actually able to be there, and I helped tape, prep, wet sand, like kind of the whole process of the paint cycle. So And so that's my first, my first Isuzu was a yellow. It was all yellow. Had a bunch of tribal because that was what was in at the time.
Yep.
In the late 90s. And so that was my first like dive into like being owning a custom truck.
Mm-hmm.
And I took it to car shows in Florida. My claim to fame with that one was I went to NOPI Nationals in Atlanta. And so that's kind of how my itch for like true custom vehicles began was the 93 Isuzu pickup.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I remember somehow hearing that Matt had worked on that, and I had met Matt about 98, and it still blows my mind. I got to see him last April, or this past April, and he dug out a bunch of photos. He was really good about taking photos with film camera, just a snap here, snap there when he finished stuff or when he was working on it. And it was kind of cool to go back through memory lane because he had reminded me he was in Florida only X amount of years. I forget if it was 14 years or something, but he worked on a lot of trucks, and it was just it was so cool, man.
Yeah, he touched a lot of the custom trucks in the Florida area, like the Orlando area. And he did a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, he truly is one talented guy.
Yeah.
Just, some of the stuff he did.
Oh, yeah. Now, let me ask you this. So we kind of transitioned to like something I'm super excited to talk about. Like from there, talk to us about how the space cab came about. Like, was that so? Like, you enjoy the regular cab truck, you do your thing, and then you end up getting the space cab. Is that kind of the transition to like the next project?
Well, it doesn't take fruition for a few years actually, because what happens is I sell the 93. I get a 98 S10 extra cab Chevy. I build that, put its lower wheels, stereo, stuff like that. Just all black, nothing fancy, just kind of a driver, daily driver, and I'm using it to go back and forth to work. And then I get rid of that, and I think I get like a 2001 two-door Blazer, and I'm like, I put a stereo in it, nothing fancy. And I'm kind of like, man, I'm missing like having something like custom.
Mm-hmm.
And so around that time, or probably prior to that, Radar's Isuzu space cab is in under construction mini trucking.
Yeah. And
so I'm like, oh man, I see the space cab. And there's been some space cabs on the cover of mini trucking at this point, right? Or in the magazine, and I'm like, and a friend of mine has one in Orlando, and I'm like, man, maybe I should build a space cab. Like, I know nobody likes the window and all that, and that's the knock on them, right? But so I go out and look for one. I pick one up, and so I'm like, okay, so now I have this truck. It's sitting in my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and so then I just start. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, and so I'm seeing like the builds that are currently happening, right? And where things are going. And yeah, they got people building frames, and in the West Coast, California, they got guys that have done frames. And at the time, a buddy of mine, Paul, that I know, he's got a crew cab dually that's right-hand drive.
Okay. Yep.
And so I'm like, interesting. Like, I'm thinking maybe I do a right-hand drive, and so I'm just writing a list, man. Like, I'm just writing things down, like what I want to do this, what I want to do that, right? So originally, it's like, okay, I go to Anthony Rhodes.
Yep.
And so I said, hey, I want to build this truck. I want you to kind of help with the build, whatever. So we take it. He takes it to his media blast guy. He media blasts it, and we do kind of the first round of modifications. We do like the shape handles, and so he starts kind of doing the build. And this is, I want to say this is around like 2002, maybe something like that. And because we're going, I know we go to show fest there, and so that's kind of being built around that time. And so I get with Paul and them because they're gonna Paul and I can't remember, Mike Jones, and there's another dude, I can't remember his name now. It'll come to me, but they're gonna open a shop. And they're doing motorcycles. The guy's dad's doing motorcycles, and they're gonna have space to build trucks.
Oh, right.
So we go in. I go, and we're talking. I was like, hey, if I'm gonna do this, like, we're going all in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, we're doing frame, motor, like nothing at the time that had been done.
Yep.
Like to the extent it's been, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So it starts getting built. It starts getting built. They build it, and then things happen, and they're like, hey, we can't build it anymore. So now it comes to my house.
Oh.
So it's in my garage. It's primered. It's running. It's got no exhaust on it. So straight headers, no interior except for except for the seats. It's in rough shape. So now I'm like, well, fuck. I gotta find someone to build it, like someone to
take over the project,
finish it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm like, and this thing and this thing has been already a headache for up to where it's been. Builds are always headaches,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, and one year you did take it to, real quick, you did take it to blood drag, like 02, 03-ish.
Yes, so I think it's 02. It goes to blood drag. So it's and that's a last minute decision.
Okay.
It's a should we go? Should we not go? Because I didn't want many people to see it.
Yep.
Like the frame went to Slam Fest.
Yep.
Like that same year, and like nobody knew what the frame was for. Like we weren't telling nobody. Oh, it's a frame. We're building this frame, but nobody knew it was my frame.
Yep.
And so I'm like, okay, let's take it. We'll take it. So we hurriedly mix a minty green primer color.
Yep.
To primer the whole truck. We do, like you mentioned, I think on the on Facebook, we do the grill for the dashboard.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, just to be like, screw it, people. Like, oh my god, they're gonna do it.
Yeah, get people talking.
So we take it down there, and I'm like, okay, so to see kind of the buzz and what people like on it, what people don't like on it, whatever, because things can be changed, right?
Yep.
And then after that, that's maybe 6 months after that, it's in my garage, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm like, okay, who do I take it back to Anthony? And he's backed up, he's busy.
Yep.
Because he's building. I think at the time he's building Catch 22.
Yeah.
Probably around that time, if not already done with it. But so that's where, with the help of Mitch Henderson, he gets me hooked up with Kevin Cox in Oklahoma.
Yep. And that was like, this was like when because people may not realize you moved from Florida to Texas around that time. Is that when like you start transitioning the project to go, you know what, this is where my stomping ground is going to be? Mitch Henderson, right. Rest in peace. He says, yo, look, I can get you linked in with these guys.
Yeah, so it's right about it's before I moved.
Okay.
And so I get the truck brought over there. It gets over there, and so I go and visit, and kind of we get the game plan. And at this point, there's already a rendering. So there wasn't really a rendering until we get to him. Thank you to Robbie and KG. He did the rendering for me, and so now there's a plan. Like, okay, here's the rendering. This is what else needs to be worked on. And so then for, I don't even know how long it's there, and they're probably over a year, and they're building it. And then I get it back for like the Good Guys show. So I get it back for that show.
Okay.
And there's some stuff that still needs to be finished. It's like not perfect. And I'm a big perfectionist. So like, I was like, okay. So I talked to Jim Baines, and that's how he gets to Killer Ridez in Sigleville.
Yeah, it's because Jim is the guy over. I think he's the owner of Killer Ridez.
Yes, yeah, he's the owner of Killer Ridez. So basically, it's finished, but not completely finished when I get it back. And then I talk to Jim. He takes it, and he finishes all the there's some little nuances that need to be taken care of that he fixes. And so that's how it kind of progressed through the different shops, and it had seen a lot of shops, a lot of different people touched hands on it, and I'm grateful for everybody that did their part in it. Without like Anthony starting it, without Paul and Mike Jones and those guys, it wouldn't have had the frame, it wouldn't have the motor, and then Kevin up there in Oklahoma, it wouldn't have had the paint, it wouldn't have the interior, because I didn't have it like he got his guy to his stereo guy that came up with the rendering for the whole interior.
Yeah, I remember seeing that in the feature. They mentioned like the design group that came up with it. I was like, holy crap, that's like big stuff.
Yeah, and then going to SEMA, getting all the sponsors for it. Rockford was one of the sponsors at the time for it. So it's just a lot of hands. I think most builds nowadays are probably like that. There's multiple shops have their hands in the role of getting a vehicle built. But
oh yeah,
back when I was doing it, it seemed like it was going to make me go crazy.
Yeah, no doubt. And what I want the listeners to know too, that if you think about, back not quite 20 years, but when this truck was being built, I mean, sure, there were high end builds going around the country, like Time Machine and things like that, but like this truck to have a frame, to have the motor swap, to have right hand drive, like I'll be honest, like when I saw your truck finished, dude, I always want to tell you, it motivated the hell out of me. Like when I saw the painted moldings on it, I knew, dude, I want that on my S10. And there was a C10 also that was on the cover of Sport Truck. It had a very similar, like around that era, it seemed like a lot of guys were doing that. You were the first one that I can remember in the mini truck scene. But like when I saw that, and the bed on my truck really resembles how the inside bed of yours is finished. And then you had the cover that opened up. Like, dude, it just had so many mods to it, man.
Yeah, that's kind of where the name came from too. Like I wanted to be the exception to the rule.
Yep.
Like I didn't want to follow the normal blueprint. Yeah, like I'm not gonna just do what everybody was doing. Like if I'm gonna do something, and that's why I said it was gonna be as close to a hot rod as a. And I'm not saying it's a Riddler Award car, but I'm saying like how those guys, go out and touch every single thing on the vehicle. That's what we were going to do. And I was like, I didn't care what it cost, and we were going to do it. And it is funny now today, like when I've kind of got back going to car shows, here and there. And you're like, oh, hey, look, a bed door that opens up and shows the suspension. You're like, I did that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just kind of funny how some of the stuff that I see now, I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool because, I did it a long time ago and it's still, something that people still do that they still think is cool to do.
Yes. Yep, exactly. Yeah, and so walk us through, like in your head, like if somebody, if you're in an elevator and somebody's like, hey, have you ever built something custom? Like when I think of the elevator pitch on this truck and you talk about some of the mods that stand out to you, whether it's the interior, the exterior, the engine bay, what are some things that come to mind for you, Anthony?
I mean, first and foremost is the right-hand drive.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the first thing I'd be like, yeah, I built this truck that had a right-hand drive, and we didn't, we did it like the hard way. Like now you could probably buy everything from Australia or what I mean? So you could buy everything. Back then I didn't have the access to stuff that guys have now.
Yep. Like
I found a site that shows every molding, everything you need for an Isuzu they have now. Like you can just buy it. Like
wow.
Like when I did it was like hunting and pecking, trying to find somebody that knew somebody, what I mean?
Yeah.
But I probably would definitely be the right-hand drive. And
for me too, I will say this. I'll tag in here the roll down back window. Like that's always longtime listeners will know. Like I always talk about. I love that. C.R. Lawrence made them for the Chevys up to like 91, 92. But you started getting into it. Might be the first one I can remember. I remember seeing it. I was like, damn. And that was one mod we were going to do on my truck. And, Jimmy was like, look, it's a little different on the S10 square or the S10 round bodies. But like seeing that, to me, also gave a cool other perspective because when the window's down and you look at photos from that era, like you don't have the glare when you're getting that rear photo into the interior. Like, dude, that was just like, dude, awesome.
And that was like a whole, like, I don't even... That was an afterthought. Like that wasn't on the list of things to do. At first, it was. I think we were somewhere. Like I was driving somewhere and going to pick up. I think some parts for the truck, and pulled into the parking lot. And there was a 4Runner there, and the window was half down.
Boom.
And I looked at. I was like, And I was like, well, I already have a Toyota bumper and front bumper valance on the truck. I'm like, and I was like, and I think I was with Paul, and I said, hey, Paul, you think we could do a roll down back window? And he was like, I guess we could.
Yeah. And again,
so
it just
like,
adds to like every piece of this thing is touched custom.
Yeah, and then I called around junkyard. It's got the whole back deck lid from a 4Runner.
Sick.
And then we just took the mechanism. The glass was we had to get the glass cut specifically for the truck. And then it had the power back window on it, the roll down back window.
Oh yeah.
But I think like my favorite thing, I mean, and it's kind of weird, it's not, but it's like the bed, the inside of the bed to me is kind of like my favorite.
Yep.
Because it's not like it's rolled, it's smooth corners. It just kind of all flows. And I know that's kind of the boring part of the vehicle. It's not the most exciting part, but for me, it's kind of like the bed's like my favorite piece of the truck.
Yeah, it looks so clean. And speaking of the bed, what always stuck out to me in for the listeners, December 2006 Street Trucks cover is to me when the Isuzu's when the bed's welded shut, those body lines come across, but then you did the caddy tails on it, and then you Frenched in the tag like down around on the driver's side around where the body line was at. Like all of that just from that rear 3/4 shot looks flawless. Yeah,
that was a whole. I think at the time it was the FBI. I think this is what bought the whole tailgate. It was the tailgate combo skin with the roll pan, and then you could tell where you wanted your license plate. And I wanted it not just in the normal, not the normal
spot
place that most people put it. So I figured let's do something a little bit different. So we just kind of put it there. I thought it kind of gave it a pretty cool looking look,
Yeah, and also import trucks at that time, to jump to the front, it's like, I mean, I'm going from memory, but there weren't many guys, if any, that I knew of that were going and you said, hey, let's do a small block Chevy engine. So that was a whole nother aspect that you said, hey, we'll do a motor swap, but we're not just going to bump up from a 4 to a 6-cylinder Isuzu motor. We're going to go and do something crazy.
Yeah, that was
cool.
Yeah, and it was at the time I was driving a Tahoe too, so I was like, man, I have V8 power in my Tahoe. Let's put V8 power in the Isuzu. Yeah. And one of the other vehicles the guys were building at Dragon, that was the name of the shop.
Yep.
They were building an S10 that had a V8 swap in it as well. And that thing never got finished, but that thing had some crazy mods on it and whatnot. And I never knew what happened to it, but so I was like, let's do a V8 swap. And my buddy Bobby, he had an old Caprice that had a 383 stroker motor in it.
Ah.
And he was like, dude, I'll give you the motor.
Wow.
So like, I was like, you really? He's like, yeah, I'll give it to you, man. He's like, I'll give you the motor. We'll put it in the truck. So he gives me the motor, and his brother built it. So it was all down straight. It was good to go. No issues. And then we, painted it and everything else and got all the billet and the chrome and all the accents and stuff and put it on there and dropped it in. And then it was just building that firewall.
Yeah.
Which, it just sits right in there. It's like the ring in the jewelry box. You open up the hood, it's in there, which is another favorite thing on the truck that I think, when I look at the truck. There's so many things that, it's funny when I saw it the last time I saw it at Alabama, not this year, last year when I went. I hadn't seen it in person in probably 10 years.
10 years or so, yeah.
It was a long time since I had seen it in person, and I look at every now and again. I'll look at a picture of it or whatever, but I'm not. It's like that's my past,
out of
right?
sight,
out
of sight, out of mind, yeah.
But when I walked up on it, I was just like, oh my god, like
that's a nice truck.
I'm like, that's a pretty damn nice truck, and I'm just like thinking, wow,
that was mine. I had my hand in it.
Yeah, like my ideas are like what you see, in person. So it's kind of surreal. It's kind of crazy. And then when I seen it at World of Wheels in Kansas City, because the owner takes it, he likes to go to some of the World of Wheels shows. and he had that thing dialed in. Like it was
spot on.
It was immaculate. Like it was shining. It was like everything. All the billet was super polished, and it was just like, and there was some high end stuff there. And I'm like, this thing can compete. This thing can compete with some of the high end stuff. So it was, it was like a kind of a affirmation that like when I built it, I did it right.
Yeah, all those years later, and I think it stood the test of time. Speaking of the firewall, that's another thing I carried over on my truck because I remember, and I'm saying all this because, again, giving you the props, we talk about giving these guys the flowers to hear like, hey, you built some badass shit. But the firewall, what was cool is I don't know that any mini truckers at the time had done, there was a company, Kugel Components, that was kind of doing, they're like, oh, you can get the unsightly brake booster off, or on my S10, we ended up just doing, a lot of people don't know, it's just a manual brake setup in mine, but basically you get it off the firewall, and that was one thing that stood out to me about your firewall is, you hear about guys shaving a firewall, dude, yours is not even shaved, it's like, boom, there's nothing there.
Yeah, that was, again, when you back then, again, you're looking at, 20 years ago almost. There wasn't some of the stuff they have now. Like Willwood didn't make a mini,
right.
A mini hydraulic brake booster. So you're like, okay, we don't want the brake booster on the firewall, but where are we going to put it? So it was like a lot of this stuff was trial and error. Like, hey, this isn't going to work. We got to come up with something else. Or, I'd get a call at work. Hey, Anthony, we ran into a little snag on this. I'm like, all right, I get off work at 7. The shop was about 20 minutes away from my job when I worked in Orlando. So like, it'd be nice that I would leave work, go down to the shop and help, figure something out or like help work on the truck. And, so there was a lot of those, hey, Anthony's, we need to relook at this, or hey, Anthony, this isn't going to work. We got to figure something out. But I just wanted everything to be like super clean. Like if it didn't need to be visible, I didn't want it visible. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I just wanted everything. And even now, like you'll get smooth firewalls, like you're saying, but you still have like that Willwood brake booster on there. But they're so small and like shiny and pretty now.
Yeah. You could pull the stuff off a little different now. Yeah. Yeah, the other thing, the interior was crazy because not only, obviously, we talked about right-hand drive, but the dash was crazy. You had the pods in the middle. But then I think an underrated aspect was the center console, how it flows from the dash all the way to the back. And still unique to this day was once, the center console kind of splits off into the space cab section, you almost have this, you see them on boats now, almost, these speaker bars, right? But you had this kind of unique aspect on how they mounted those rear speakers on the top. But then the tank, how you can kind of see a couple guys, I know Rico from Aftermath, he ended up doing a molded tank setup in his bed. That was unique. You really never saw that again. But how your tank was mounted in here, this was still, I haven't seen anybody do anything close to that.
Yeah, that was from the original build. Like when the build was started, because we were like, everyone was doing these little small, 5-gallon tanks, and I was like, let's do something different. Let's kind of put a little focus on the tanks. And again, the interior wasn't even planned or thought about at that point. And so I wound up getting 2 scuba tanks. And so we welded them together and put them on a mount, and that's what those are. They're scuba tanks.
So awesome.
And then the interior guys just said, "Let's run with it. Let's build everything in the back around it and like kind of showcase them. We painted them green and just let them be kind of in the middle of all the stereo in the rear of the truck there."
Oh yeah, it looks good. Now, something to me that's underrated on the interior is, so as many truckers, we love our sliding rag tops, right? Scepter had one in his Isuzu, like so many people have, right? But, to have a space cab, you get a little bit more, space, so to speak, with it open. But then you guys go, and again, this is, your truck and you as a mini trucker, gave us a lot of ideas. It's like, oh man, let's take it to the next level. Everybody was trying to outcompete everyone. But with yours, you end up, the interior guys craft this cover. So when basically you have a headliner, right? This badass looks like leather.
Yeah.
But when it's closed, when you get that photo, you're kind of like, okay, you see something there, but it all flows, man.
Yeah, that was just the interior guys. Like, I gave them free reign. Like they drew the rendering, and I was like, yeah, cool, go with it. And they decided to make like an insert, a headliner piece with kind of a design that kind of flowed with the rest of the interior, so that you could shut the slide rag, and it still kind of looked clean and neat. Because I never personally, when I showed it, I always had the slide rag closed, and I always left that piece in. The owner now, he always opens it. He always has the slide rag open, the headliner out, which either way, it looks good. I just always had it closed because I was like, to me,
it just flowed.
It just flew better for me, but it looks good either way. I mean, you get a 40x40 slide rag, you might as well keep it open and let the sun shine.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, the feature in Street Truck said EPOC Design Group took over behind the seats and built a custom enclosure in the space cab that houses the Rockford Fosgate. So kind of what you've reinforced there.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned, and I think you said this a few minutes ago too, when the truck, for those that don't know, when it went to dust off, if people look back at the photos from 06, you and I were talking, and I always had noticed how it didn't have the bed cover on it. So, to your point, a lot of C10 guys, a lot of mini truck guys, I mean, it's a big thing now. You'll see on these real high-end builds, Jimmy did it on my S10, is, you'll have this bed cover that kind of opens up, whether it's on an actuator or whatever. But I want to talk about how yours ended up getting painted along with the air cleaner. But at dust off, it wasn't on there. And that wasn't the official debut. Ironically enough, when this airs, it's going to be the same week. I think you debuted it at Heatwave 06, but before at Dust Off, I say all that because the cover wasn't on there. Was it just not finished at that point?
Yeah. So the bed door and the air cleaner weren't finished. So basically, those were two of the items that when I gave it to Jim Killer Ridez, they were tweaking.
I got it.
So they were redoing the bed door to repaint it with the wood grain in it to be a little lighter. The wood grain was a little too dark on the original. So they were repainting that. And then the air cleaner was being totally redone. The one that was originally done was not to my liking. So those guys were rebuilding it, and had one of my buddies that used to work there, Chris Hilton, had a hand in working on the air cleaner. Plenty of different guys that worked at Killer Ridez have come to me before, messaged me, hey, I worked on your truck at Killer Ridez and stuff. But so those two items were still being built or reworked. So we just, since the shop is literally like a mile down the street from where that show used to be, I was like, yeah, let's just bring it. Hey, why not? Let's bring it out. And like I mentioned earlier, Mitch Henderson's one of his first 37 that he built, the truck version, was there, and so my truck and his truck were parked next to one another. And I have some pretty cool pictures of those together.
Yeah, that is pretty cool, and rest in peace, Mitch. I wanted to kind of ask you how, looking back on it now with him now being gone, unfortunately, so many people talked about how he had a hand in maybe linking him up or linking people up with other folks or him helping and that type of thing. And it's got to be some good memories that you have, back with your old brother at the time, having his hand in it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, he helped me quite a bit. I mean, when we were doing the renderings, when I was getting the renderings back from Robbie and stuff, I was like, hey, Mitch, I was like, hey, we got this color combo. Like, I really want to do green. What's your opinion on color combo? So we talked about the color combos on the truck. He again got me linked up with Custom Concepts in Oklahoma. I had the privilege to go to the SEMA that truck debuted, his first 37, which was ironic. My truck was supposed to be there, but it didn't get finished in time. So, something nobody knows. It was supposed to be at SEMA that year in... that
would have been 06 or 07, I think.
It would have, like 06, because it was right, it would have been...
Right when Street Trucks magazine came out.
Yes.
Because it was December, and they came out about a month early.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
I still went. I still went. I still had the opportunity just to kind of, hang with Mitch and just, listen to him talk. And, he always talked about stuff, and I always listened.
Yeah.
Because if something was gonna become a fad, something was gonna come into the popularity, he knew it was gonna come.
Yeah,
he just
knew those trends.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's he had a lot of input in the truck, and just kind of my me not building something to this level ever before, and him with all his builds. With Cha-Ching and stuff like that, like he was one of the perfect people to kind of pick their brain.
Yeah, innovator. I do want to talk about some more things related to the truck, and something that comes to mind. People may not know. I always like to try to get the backstory on how the cover shoot went down. The cool thing is, tip of the cap to Jeremy Cook. I love this cover because oftentimes you get these 3/4 shots and things like that. When Jeremy shot this front 3/4 shot, he shot it from the passenger side, which is right-hand drive, and it was cool because you see the front fender, you see the wheels perfectly, the paint job, the molding painted on, but then you get the good shot of the interior and a little bit of the bed. A lot of times these are shot on location at a show, but my understanding was it wasn't shot at Heatwave when it debuted in 2006, fully done. It was shot before then, you were telling me.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny how I even got into having Jeremy shoot it for Street Trucks. I was in Orlando still. I was working, and Mitch actually brought Jeremy to Killer Ridez shop, and my truck was there.
Wow! And
so Jeremy asked Mitch, "Whose truck is that?"
He's like, "Damn, dude, we got to have that."
And Mitch was like, "Oh, that's my boy AJ's truck, And he's like, "Oh man, I gotta shoot that truck." Well, unfortunately, I was already talking to Mike Alexander about shooting it for mini trucking.
Yeah, it was one of those. Yeah, and it's like this thing I was gonna always say is this is the funny thing. We always had this dream of getting on Mini Truckin magazine, but in that era, something that I've always thought about is like Street Trucks was like. I don't want to. It was almost like a cut above because, as you know, they didn't run a ton of mini trucks on the cover.
Exactly.
They had some, but yeah, I mean, you looked at the magazine quality and things, and it's no slight against Mini Truckin, but it was almost like if you could have the pick. So, talk to us. Like, how did that end up going down? Does Mitch cut the broker the deal there, or what?
Well, he basically calls me. He's like, "Hey, I got somebody that wants to talk to you." I'm like, "Okay," not knowing who it is. And so it's Jeremy, and he's like, "Hey, man, my name," he introduces himself, whatever. And we start talking, and I was like, "Man, I don't know. I've already kind of promised Mini Truckin."
Yeah.
He's like, but man, it's going to be in the cover. We'll do a full blowout. We'll give you the biggest feature, like the most pages, yada, 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 and all this stuff. And I was like, oh man. And so I was like thinking, like, who's been on the cover? What mini trucks have been on the cover at that point?
Sure.
And I think maybe 1, 2 at that time.
Yeah, a few,
and I was like, and then I kind of talked to my wife about it, and I was like, what should I do?
Right.
Because like now I'm like, both magazines want me. I don't want to ruin my relationship with Alexander if I say I'm going to go Street Trucks, So there's some of that brokering going back and forth. But I ultimately was like, you know what? They're going to do the feature of the truck. They're going to do a tech article on the pinstriping, that first scratch on the truck. And also there's, just it's on Street Trucks, So
sure.
So that's how we did it. We that's kind of how that all happened. And that was like a last minute, like we're going to Street Trucks over Mini Truckin.
Oh yeah, and so it was shot. You think like a week or two, or leading up to Heatwave, which was July, like let's say July 24th ish, 2006. It was shot before then.
Yeah, it was shot before then. It was actually shot. So it's kind of funny. There's a correctional facility down the street from where Jim's shop is, where Killer Ridez is. They were trying to get it shot on the grounds of that correctional facility.
Oh, really?
That's what they were wanting to shoot it, like with the fence and the barbed wire.
That would have been insane, yeah.
But obviously they wouldn't let them do that. So they wound up just shooting it in like a warehouse area district, and that's kind of where it was shot. Nothing fancy, special, nothing like that. Just this warehouse thing that was behind the shop.
Yeah, the truck spoke for, itself. And what's cool is, for those that don't know, December 06 Street Trucks, you basically have 6 feature spread, which is insane. You have the cover, of course, which is an awesome timeless cover, but then also on the table of contents, there's like a nighttime photo. And I figured that maybe they had stayed out all day and they said, hey, let's shoot it. I mean, it looks like a nighttime photo, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, I think they did take some pictures of it during the night because of the paint on the truck. It's got pearls and stuff in it, so it looks a little differently in night lighting. But yeah, they did take some night photos of it too, which I didn't know that until I saw the magazine.
Yeah, which I thought was cool. And it was funny because when the earlier regime was there, Stillwell, Courtney, and McCormick, they would often take an awesome photo for the table of contents. You really don't see this a lot now, but it was cool that Jeremy did that because it just kind of maybe gives an outtake of a photo or whatnot, and it just looked really cool. So
yeah.
Now, it's funny you mentioned this earlier about the space cab windows. I actually like them because I think they're a little bit more rare. And I'm sure over the years you probably had people like, "Oh man, you could have just reshaped the window, whatever." But I think hindsight, I think it's I don't know what it is. It's a rare. Kind of a rare breed. You don't see as many space cabs, and when you do, especially in Florida, they're pretty rough. But to me, I always, for some reason, I did want to bring this up, but I always thought it looked good the way you left it. I'm glad that you did.
Oh yeah, I've had people say, "Why didn't you redo the window to match the other window?" And
after you've done all this other stuff, that's what they pointed out. It's like, really?
Sure, they didn't notice. They didn't notice the smooth the smooth radiator mound, but they wanted that done.
Yeah,
and that never ever crossed my mind. Never crossed my mind. Now what I did, one thing that did cross my mind that I never even tried to execute was what if I could roll the extra cab windows down, have them roll down?
Oh, right.
But I was like, yeah, I think we're too far in now. Let's just go with what we got.
Yeah, exactly. There was a truck, I think it might have been 06 or something. I forget. There was a green full-size C10 that Street Trucks featured, and they called the feature Rockstar or something. And so this guy made it was a crew cab C10, then he made it an extended cab. And so it was, 4 doors plus an extended cab, and he did, but it's a Chevy, right? So they're flat. He did the roll down side windows, and then he did the roll down back window. I was like, that's a lot of windows, man. It'd be my luck. None of the window motors would be working.
Right. Yeah.
That's a lot. But the other aspect of the truck was the wheels, right? So USW Forge, they technically, at least in the feature, that when they created this wheel, to me, very timeless. It's a good mix of a lot of different billet wheels that come to mind for me, but I love the wheel. But they also called the wheel Xception, so you kind of had basically a one-off wheel.
Yeah, and so what's funny with that, Kevin, had connections with those guys and was like, hey, man, I can get them to make a wheel, a one-off wheel. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, do you want to design it? And I'm thinking, I've never designed a wheel in my life.
You're like, damn, man, I'm getting really big in here.
I'm like, but I knew somebody that could, right? So I reached out to Robbie, and I was like, hey, man, I need to design a wheel. I was like, if I give you a couple of wheels that I have in mind, can we come up with something? And so I took 2 different, and I won't say which wheels because I don't want to get the company calling me, but hey, you couldn't do that. But so I took 2 wheels that I really liked and merged them together and kind of came up with the look of the wheel. And when we pitched it to them, they only made, the little spikes that were on the wheel, we had them hollow. Because of structural integrity and things like that, they had to make them, solid with the ribs in it. But and then they built them, and they sell. Bond Speed sells the wheel as the Tsunami. So I don't know if USW Forge got bought by bomb speed at some point in time, but the wheel is called the Tsunami now.
So cool, yeah, and it just reinforces the icing on the cake with this build is that nothing. I don't mean this disrespect to anybody else, but like nothing was cookie cutter. Like like you said, going back to the beginning, the foresight that you had, like, hey, we want to go full tilt, hot rod ish. I mean, all the boxes were checked, and I just think that's pretty cool. The feature also mentioned, so we talked about Mitch Henderson, rest in peace. Jim Bain, I think is how you say his name.
Mm-hmm.
You had a Scott Hot Rods front clip. We talked about the one-off USW forged wheels Xception, but also one of your brothers at the time, Cope Kessler. I know he was mentioned in there as well, and I'm sure he played a hand in maybe helping a little bit.
Yeah, he did some stuff on the interior stuff. He did all the for the sponsors. He did all the logos for the windows.
Awesome.
For sponsors and stuff. Yeah, Kobe actually was one of my next door neighbor for a few years when I first moved to Texas.
Very cool. Yeah, and shout out to Ruben Arteaga. He helped get Cope on, and it was one of our most listened to and downloaded episodes. People just absolutely loved it. I mean, obviously had his hand in the Blaupont van, and I mean, what cool stuff hasn't he? If you look up, the definition of cool in the dictionary, there's a picture of Cope Kessler, right? I mean, he's got his hands in a lot of cool stuff. So shout out to Cope.
For sure.
The other thing I wanted to mention, I wanted to ask you this: is there maybe one thing that comes to mind, whether it's a story or a feature or a mod on the truck that maybe people just don't know that we haven't already talked about? Any little fun factoid or anything?
Oh man, I'm trying to think.
Or a crazy story behind the scene where it was like, like you kind of hinted, or you gave us one little nugget where it was going to go to SEMA, and it just didn't. Everything didn't align. Obviously some of the pinstriping and stuff. That I remember hearing some things like you wanted to kind of dial some things in, but I think you did all that right because. Even our friend Brad Chrisman that has this awesome S10, like he finished his truck and he wanted to redo the interior and he had Big Body do it. And he just kind of felt like the truck wasn't done. And like with you wanted to just dial in those final details and go boom. And that's what you did.
Yeah, I just didn't like when I was building it especially because so many people knew about the build, like people would ask me where the build's at or at the time with Street Source, right, there'd be pictures of it on there. Or then when it came out in under construction, and Mini Truckin under construction because of Alexander when he ran it in there. And I just felt there was like such a big buildup, like when the truck was going to be debuted, that like it had to be 110%
dialed in. Yeah.
I mean, even like there's issues with it. I mean, there's flaws even when it was done. There was a little thing here, a little thing there.
Yeah, and I mean stuff that people's never going to see. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was just that whole we have to make sure it's built completely, everything's buttoned up because I don't want somebody to be like, oh look, he forgot to I don't know, do this on that door or something. Yeah. So there was a lot super high pressure and high stakes on the build to get it right, and so that's kind of why it was always kind of being pushed back. Oh no, we got to do this, and then it was finally when Jim got it all buttoned up. I was like, okay, we're going to go to heat wave. Like, that's the goal. Let's get it to heat wave. We talked to Jeremy. Jeremy came and shot it the whole 9 yards. One funny story was, and this is, we go to the RA show in Millington.
Oh, right. The All-Star event.
Right. Yeah, the All-Star event, which was probably one of my favorite shows. And so we're parked. We have it parked on the grass by where everyone's driving by.
Oh, boy.
And so I go to start it. All right, I go to start it up, and it backfires. and almost catches some of the grass on fire underneath the truck.
Oh, boy.
So I'm sitting there patting it out with my hand. Well, Eli Griffin, he goes and runs and grabs a fire extinguisher because his truck had burnt down.
Right. A lot of people don't know that. Yeah.
So he comes running back with a fire extinguisher. He's like, "I got you a fire extinguisher. I didn't want your truck to burn down. I don't want you to be like me, whatever."
Wow, there's a fun fact. Wow. Yeah, shout out to Eli.
Fun fact, my truck almost burnt down in Millington, Tennessee.
God, crazy.
But yeah, that truck had Speedy always jokes with me, the covered trucks always are cursed. It won't start here. It wouldn't start there. It definitely gave me a lot of headaches.
Yeah.
Not wanting to start or this or that.
And I do believe even with mine, I had hiccups and stuff. And I think sometimes, and like you said, it is a little different now because nowadays you can order an LS engine that's, you can spend 10, 20, 30 grand on an LS depending on what you want. And, you can have things a little bit dialed in. But back then, like even on my truck, like I had a great running 4-cylinder and it's like, okay, go 4.3. Well, let's powder coat the block. Let's do this. Before you know it, it's all custom, and then, you need everything to work perfectly together. And it's not that they didn't, but it's just, sometimes we had our hiccups, and I certainly had mine, it's frustrating. But one of the things in the feature that it starts off with is it says, in the December 06 Street Trucks that, you wanted to build a truck that was timeless, and I really think that, I know that you accomplished that. And, to me, when I think of the caliber, the hustle, the time, the determination, all of that, all of the accolades, a question that I have, and I kind of maybe ran into this a little bit of myself, and you hinted at the very end of your last statement. Do you do all of that? You go to all these shows, you realize like the time and effort, and you got your normal career, and do you just get bored with it and just go, it's all this been that, I've grit my teeth all these years and there's all this money going out and all this time and effort and I'm just ready to move on? Is that kind of what happens? Because I know I've got an answer in my head.
I don't think I ever got bored of it. I think, unfortunately, as you get older, you have kids, you have a family.
Yep.
For me, it was just kind of a different path in my life, a different direction I was going.
Yep.
And so that's where the decision, even though it was a very hard decision, was to put it up for sale. I hated that I sold it. Like I said, I knew it got sold after I sold it, and then it got sold again. And I was playing kind of in my mind, like tag, where did it go? I got to find it kind of thing.
Yep.
And then the owner that owns it now actually reached out to me because one thing I will say about the owner now, his name's Tim. He's really tried to keep it how it was and like bring it back to how it was and fix any little thing that might be wrong with it, So that's why I said when I saw it in Kansas City, it just looked breathtaking. Like it was polished, it was beautiful. Mm-hmm. And he's just maintenance things and little things here and there. But the truck, the truck still looks like you said, it's timeless. It still amazes me when he posts pictures of it or whatever, or even like when you guys post pictures or other Facebook pages post pictures, how like all the comments, like all the positive comments that people say are like, oh, that truck this and that, or it's timeless, or it's my favorite Isuzu. Like it's kind of humbling because I'm like, wow, like what I did 15, 20, whatever, 17, 18 years ago, whatever it was. Like people still can enjoy it and still like respect what was done and what was put into the vehicle.
Yeah, 100%. Because comments can be crazy these days. Someone dug an old severed truck out the other day, and it's like an early 2000s, and the comments are like the taillights are horrible and this and that, and people tend to forget that. When something's done 20 years ago, like, you look in the 70s, fashion was different. We look at bell bottoms and go, what were they thinking? That's not, I don't know. I just don't think they're cool. But, you think about that even with a truck. And, in this scene of ours, it's like you're hot 1 minute, you got the craziest truck. And then the next year, it's like people walk past it and go, oh, that's old news, But like with your truck, when I saw it at Battle in Bama 2017, I think Pascal's brother had just bought it, and I think that's the person you sold it to, right?
Yeah, that's the person I sold it to. It felt right. Some people, when you sell something to it, you're like, but it just felt right. Like it was kind of funny because all the people like the guy that owns it now wanted it then.
Right.
Just couldn't make it happen. And now it's funny because I have all these people like coming to me, oh yeah, I wanted to buy it. I wanted to, like, all these people wanted to buy it. It's like, well, it was for sale. You could have bought it.
Right. Because I remember back in the Street Source days, I think it was your truck that you had for sale. There was someone, and it might have been yours, and I remember, you kind of wanted it gone. And, because, like, not wanted it gone, but you let me restate that. You kind of wanted to kind of move on, right? And we all kind of get to some of those things. But what's awesome is, much like when Charles Armstrong sold Time Machine, he sold it and it did go to the mini truck collector, but he can go see it anytime he wants and things like that. And to me, that would be my biggest fear, selling something. And we've seen this over the years where people just start dragging trucks and then they just get thrashed and they end up in a junkyard, right? And you're like, how? Mm-hmm. With this thing, it's in the right hands of a guy that appreciates it. He's going to take it to shows, and to me, that is the icing on the cake. That's the silver lining that, we sometimes need to get rid of or let stuff go. But if it goes to someone like that, and I'm sure if it was something that you really, really ever wanted back, or he got into a position where he couldn't continue to be the caretaker, he would call you first,
Yeah, so, no, that's actually it's been discussed several times.
Yeah, first right of refusal, that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, before we wrap it up here in a few minutes, I just wanted to ask you about your career. But is there anything else? Like, I'm sure there's maybe some guys' names that don't always get brought up. Like you said, you gave props to everybody that had their hands in it, which I think is awesome. But is there anything else that maybe we didn't touch on that you were thinking maybe we could have as far as the truck goes?
Nah, I mean, I think we've kind of talked about it. I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, we talked about all the late nights and all the crazy stuff, and the trip to Blood Drag and getting that thing ready at till 2-3 in the morning, and
yeah,
what I mean. But I think the people that worked on it know they worked on it, and the people that I've given props to deserve it. I mean, there was a lot of people, a lot of hands that went into building it, and it just sounds weird that it's been built that many years ago. And I'm like, because I don't consider myself one of the, like when you talk about guys in the scene, like my name's not even on that list of the badasses of the scene. Like I'm just honored that you wanted to talk about my truck.
Sure, I mean, and listen, I've learned a lot from hip hop guys, like an Ice-T. And it's funny, like he'll post something and he'll say, such and such rapper or hip hop artist is one of the GOATs. And people are like, one? And he's like, yeah, the GOATs, the greatest of all time. He goes, we kind of throw the crown around, And if you think about it, that's, I think, something important for our scene because, there's never going to be just one all-time greatest of all time, right? Because there's all these different trucks that are built. There's different eras, and that type of thing. So, like, to me, when I post a truck, like when I post yours and I say one of the GOATs, I mean that with all respect because it's like, we could sit here and argue and people could say Last Look's the greatest of all time, this and that. Yeah, but if we just if we put it like a little bucket together and we go, hey, these are some of the GOATs, your Isuzu Xception is in that bucket, dude. I mean, it certainly is, dude. It just obliterated. And I think what it did also, which I think is underrated, is people have to understand that it also helps ratchet up the next generation or the next guys or the next build that's coming after it. To me, it's all encompassing there.
Cool, man. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no doubt. Let me ask you this before we wind it down. A lot of people like to... like when I just mention or bring up like the type of career that you have, because one of our good listeners and homies, Ed Eister, old school Florida mini trucker, he had chimed in. Ed. Yeah, Ed's a good dude, and he goes, and I always knew that you kind of had this career. I always think of like a first responder type thing, but I don't officially know, but I didn't know if you just wanted to kind of mention what you do.
Oh, yeah, man. So I'm actually a respiratory therapist. So been doing that for 24 years.
Wow.
So the whole COVID stuff, I was in the thick of it for the whole time.
Wow.
I've done all kinds of stuff. I work with all ages, babies to adults.
Wow.
So yeah, I've done a little bit of everything with it, man. I've done some care flight, helicopter transports, stuff like that. So I'm kind of a nerd
when it comes to that kind of stuff. Yeah. And did you, when you had mentioned going to school and stuff like that, did you think that that's where you wanted to kind of end up in a role like that, or how did that come about?
Yeah, actually, it was kind of funny when I ran into what respiratory therapists are just because of a family member was in the hospital and needing their assistance.
Wow.
And so I kind of looked at it and I was like, oh, that's something I could see myself doing. And so that's kind of the path I took. And I stayed, like I said, I stayed in Orlando, and which is, if I wouldn't have been in Orlando, would I've ever been in, would I've got into the scene?
Right.
And, you know what I mean? So it's kind of, it's kind of like those things that I feel are kind of intertwined, my career and my mini trucking life.
That's so cool, man. Well, I definitely appreciate you sharing a little bit there, a little insight. But, like I said, I mean, you mentioned a lot of these guys, Rawl from Rhodes Auto Works, Killer Ridez, rest in peace, Mitch Henderson, Kevin Cox, you mentioned his name, Cope Kessler, Jim, from Killer Ridez and all that. Again, thank you so much for, just taking the time to talk a little bit about it. Been on our list a while, and I know it takes me forever to get to some of the guys, but certainly you were patient and you said, hey, when the time's right, let's do it. And Xception, dude, what an awesome truck. And I'm just so happy to see, it continuing to live on, in terms of its legacy and almost at that 20-year mark of it being out there. So I truly hope that in the near future, I can't make any promises, but it definitely needs to be in the Mini Truck Hall of Fame. And you'll have my vote whenever it, not if, but when it comes up for vote.
That would be, if that ever happened, that would be like, boom. That would be an awesome. That'd be awesome, man. I mean, I don't even think things like that, but that'd be great.
Yeah, trucks like yours. I mean, I've been telling Bob and some of the guys, I'm like, we got to patch these guys in because to me, I just never want to see a situation get to where it takes so long that people are no longer with us, right? I mean, some of these older, the '80s guys are getting older, I know I'm getting older, but you know what I mean? The guys that were finishing trucks in like 81, 82, 83. So, we got to come up with a process to try to get, these trucks that deserve to be in. So, but Anthony, you go by the nickname Ant though, right? For sure.
Ant, AJ. Yeah, either Ant or AJ. Yeah, either one.
Yeah, Anthony Ammendola, thank you so much, my brother, and always appreciate, like I said, you chiming in here and there. You may have kind of moved on with some of your things in life, but we love seeing you at some of the shows. And most importantly, dude, thanks for your amazing contribution to the mini truck scene, dude. It's just unparalleled, brother.
All right, man. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir.